In today's video, we're discussing the bottom turn. The bottom turn is such a crucial setup maneuver in surfing. It's that moment of the wave where the board's on rail and it's tapping into that lift and it's setting up for that top turn. I've got a list of 10 things that we're going to work through to try to break down all the little nuances about the setup, which is the bottom turn. And then we're going to give you examples on the skate bowl, so it's going to be an absolute blast. Let's jump into it. The idea of the bottom turn, it's no different if you went snowboarding or skiing. You kind of want to get a lift up the mountain so you can enjoy the ride down. Well, surfing's pretty much the same way, it's just a really small mountain. So in surfing, water draws off the bottom and then it throws off the top. And where it draws off the bottom, it can lift you up, that you can pick a line down. And then there's a rhythm to it. There's like a 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So as soon as you've done your first bottom turn and you tap into that rhythm, you find that you can sink into the wave and start to generate a nice flow. Now don't worry about the lip, don't worry about the surfer. Look what happens underwater here. See how the water draws up? Where the water is turning and creating a vortex, it's creating lift and it's drawing all the water up from the bottom. That is the most understated part of surfing that a lot of surfers miss, and they don't know where it is, they don't know how to tap into that lift, and they don't know how to use that lift. The bottom turn is purely a setup, and what it's setting you up is to go up. When you go up the wave, what happens is you get potential energy to pick whatever line you want to take down that wave. And that's the fun part, because you can be creative with that line. And then you want to set up the next bottom turn where the wave's drawing water up to give you lift to make that easier. Now, if you get your timing right, that when the wave goes up, you go up, you start to get in sync and in rhythm with the wave, and you start to flow with it. So ultimately, the more we go up on the bottom turn, the more we can do top turns, and the more speed we create, the more fun we're going to have on that wave. At the moment, you can see the top of the wave, you can see the bottom of the wave, and it flares out. So where it flares out, there's no energy over here. Most of the energy is over here. In terms of trying to find out where do you do your bottom turn, it's as close to the foam as possible, and it's where the flat starts to bend. That's where the wave has most of its energy. So what we're going to do, we're going to look at a few examples of someone trying to learn where to do it, how to feel it, and what to do. So it's all based around the where. So if you watch our surfer, he's in the flats and then trying to create lift in the flats. In the bowl, the gray is like a dead zone. It's the flat part of the wave where there's no energy. But then as you come out towards the blue line, that's where the ramp starts to lift. So if I just roll the board down, it goes up and comes back down all on its own. Because of the shape of the wave and because water is drawing up the wave, it has the ability to lift the surfboard up. But then if you get your timing right, and as the wave sucks water up, you lift with it and you extend, you will go up. Over here, I go up, but if I do it here in the flats, it doesn't work. No matter how hard I try to do it in the flats, I'm still going to stay in the flats. So the problem with surfers, they try to balance on the board and they try to stabilize everything, and then inside of the flats, they try to go up. But they're standing on the board and up is here, whereas on the bowl, up is slightly over there and it needs to be more here. So it's vital that where you feel the angle of the wave starting to bend, that's where you start to go up and not in the flats. As he goes down to the wave, you can see that he's mid-face trying to create lift. At the bottom of the wave, there's way more energy drawing up. It's where the wave starts to hit the bottom of the floor and it starts to slow down and draw the water up for the top to lift. If you're mid-face, you're only tapping into half of the potential of the wave's power to create lift. What the surfer is doing is they're trying to create speed by themselves rather than dropping down to the wave and going to the bottom and then tapping into the whole of the wave's lift. By slowing down and going to the bottom and identifying where that is will make it so much easier. By going mid-face and rushing, you're going to have no time and space to get that done. He's down at the bottom of the wave and he does an extension. It takes about 1, 2, 3 seconds for that water to suck up. So if your bottom turns 1 and you're done, by the time you extend it and come down, you're almost compressing when the wave's extending. So the timing is out because you rush the turn. I'm going to rush it and then I'll take my time and do it. So here's the first example. I go around and over here. So as the skateboard tried to ride up the ramp, I compressed. So I almost cancelled out the lift. If you ever went to pick a child up, they would reach their arms to be lifted. But if they didn't want to, they'd do this and make themselves heavier. So what the surfer did is as they're going up the wave, they just got really heavy again. So they cancelled out the lift. What I'm going to do now, I'm going to extend and I'm going to hold the extension. And I extend. And that extension and waiting for the wave to draw you up and being a little bit more patient gives me the height that I need. Okay, some people think that there's one bottom turn for every situation, and it drives me crazy because most people want to just wham and throw a twist at it. It's all got to do with the speed that you have. So if you are riding a bicycle and you're going slowly, you'll twist the handlebars to turn. If you're going really fast, you would lean. If you've got no speed and you're walking through the house with the bicycle and it doesn't fit, you might pivot the bicycle. Think about this as well. If you're in an airplane and you're flying, the turning circle is going to be really long and slow, possibly like 1 kilometer to turn. But a trick plane could go vertically into the air and almost stall, means it's lost all its speed. As it starts to fall, it could turn on a dime. So when we're bottom turning and we're going vertically, right, we are going to pivot, lose our speed, and the wave will give us speed back. Right? That's important. If you do a pivot on a bottom turn, the same thing is going to happen. You will lose your speed. So if that one bottom turn of yours is a stomp back foot twist, there's a very good chance that you are the cause of yourself losing speed on the bottom turn. The best thing that you could do when a plane takes off, once it's got speed, it becomes aerodynamic. In water, we want to be hydrodynamic. So when you take off and you got speed, the best thing that you could do is to tilt your head over the rail and to lean. You will reduce drag on the board, the rocker will help turn you, and by leaning on the board, you will maintain speed throughout the turn, and you'll tap into the lift of the wave, which will make your bottom turn more effortless. That's the way to do the right bottom turn. The most energy efficient way for something to travel is a circle or a wheel. So when we're surfing, this is a circle that we're traveling in. If you took a wheel and you put any straight lines into the wheel, it would be clunky and it would slow down. If you take straight lines in your surfing, it's going to cause you a loss of speed. So if you watch the example on the bottom turn over here, the surfer's looking down the line to where he's safe, and when he comes off the bottom, you'll notice that he goes mid-face, and look at how straight and lateral that is, and the surfer's on the shoulder. So if you're on the shoulder, you're not really tapping into the power of the wave, and you're not going to be able to get the speed of the wave, so you're kind of in this no man's land and you're heading out of the pocket onto the shoulder. And what plays out is that they kind of lose connection with the energy. So there's science behind this, and the fastest way to travel through a curve and the most economical way through a curve is by taking the Brachystrone's curve. The curve line is the most energy efficient and quickest line. So what we're going to do, we're just going to look at the whitewater trail that my surfboard leaves behind. So if you watch the clip, I take off and I go down the wave, creating some acceleration, and then as I start to lean into the turn, look at the whitewater line, and you'll see that curve there, which is a circle. Now, in surfing, if you stand on your board, the drag on the bottom of the board is going to slow you down. But if you're on rail and you're leaning over, you're going to plane through that water so much better. If you're leaning over your rail will roll, which will allow the board to turn easier. If your rail's in the water, that wave can lift the board up. So over here, I'm tapping into the suck of the wave that draws the water up. And then, if you have a look what unfolds next, get drawn to the top, and you repeat the sequence again. By taking the fastest line in surfing, which is the Brachystrone's curve, and following that curve line, you're tapping into the power of the wave, you're tapping into the speed of the wave, you're utilizing your board better, and you'll start to get into a rhythm of the wave in which doing the following turns become easier and easier and easier. By looking at the wave and understanding the Brachystrone's curve and identifying where you want a bottom turn by knowing where the wave is sucking up, it makes your bottom turn so much easier. So when you're surfing and when you drop into the wave, you start riding down. The slower you go, your board will be wobbly, but it also means that your board's easier to turn. As you start to accelerate, there's more water passing under the board. So the more water that passes under the board, the harder it becomes to push the width down into the water and to push the thickness of the rail down into the water to get the board to turn. So the earlier you can identify where you want to turn, and the earlier you can start to tilt your head over the rail and to put pressure onto your toes, okay, the easier it's going to be to put the board into the water. When your board is on rail, there's less friction on the board, which means that the board will hold its speed through the turn a lot better. But if it's an afterthought, so you've taken off and you're like, oh crap, I've got to do a bottom turn, right? You're probably going to start leaning and the board's going to feel unresponsive because you've got to push so much harder to displace the rail and the water under that rail to make the board turn. So suddenly a gentle lean becomes a lot more effort, and you're going to have to bend your head, bend your back, push on the rail, push on the tail, and force the board to turn. Now, the downside to that, if you wanted to go up, you got to create extension and lift. But if you're finding it really hard to push the rail in, you're putting a downward pressure while the wave's giving an upward pressure. And a lot of the times, surfers cancel that energy out and they get left stuck at the bottom of the wave because they identified the bottom turn too late and they did the turn too late as an afterthought. So what I do over here, you can see lean, twist, identify where I want to do it, lean, twist. Identify where I want to do it, lean, twist. So what happens is that on every top turn, I'm looking back, where's the power on the wave? Where's the wave lifting? And as soon as I can cue in where I need to do it, I start the lean earlier. Then the bottom turn becomes effortless and maintaining speed is easy. And like I said, if it's an afterthought, your bottom turn is going to be really, really hard if you're doing it wrong. For a lot of you watching this might come as a shock to you, but you're not supposed to stand on your surfboard. When you stand on your surfboard, it causes friction and drag on the bottom, and that slows you down. So when you're on rail, you reduce friction and your board goes faster. So it's better to surf on rail and be more hydrodynamic than to be flat and cause the board to stall. So here's an example of someone surfing a bit flatter. So you'll notice that when the surfer takes off, he's standing on top of the board. And the surfer is in balance and he's trying to stabilize himself and he's trying to create control over that situation. If they were on rail, they could turn around that and hit the lip. So right now the surfer's got no space, they're in the flat, they've got no speed, and the options are limited. And then when he gets around the section, they're still trying to balance. You'll see that the board's bouncing, so all the pressure's on the back foot, and you see the bounce on the board. That's making the board slow down. And over there, all the weight's on the back foot, at the bottom of the wave, so they can't get speed, and a very, very slow, soft turn. Okay, so a couple of things. When you're trying to balance and when you're flat, you're going to go where the board fits, which is at the bottom of the wave. If you're at the bottom of the wave, it's really hard to go up. There's no water drawing up there. So trying to control all the speed and balance is the worst thing that you could do. Watch this next example. So if you think of a fish swimming through the water or a shark, the tail can only go 45 degrees each way, which means it's 90 degrees. Any more than that, the water that it's swimming through would slow it down. So you have to do multiple little pushes or twists on your surfboard to get your fins to generate speed. So if I show you the example of this person trying to get around the section, watch all the multiple fin changes, fin change, fin change, fin change, fin change, and then does a turn right at the bottom of the wave. So it's almost like they're on a surf skate and they're just trying to kind of wiggle and twist the fin to get down the line. So it's not very energy efficient because the surfer's using their body and the fin rather than surfing on rail and using the wave to create lift to go up to create the speed. So watch the next example. Every time you turn your surfboard, so there's a bottom turn where I'm on rail, the board accelerates. There's a top turn where I'm on rail and the board accelerates. Now the reason why you can tell that I'm on rail is that I'm leaning and the rail's engaged. But when the board's flat, you will have 3 fins in the water. Your outside fins, they toe in. And what happens, it helps balance and stabilize the board, but it also maximizes drag. When you're on rail, 2 of the fins theoretically are out of the water and you've only got that 1 fin that is a stabilizer, but the fin has a foil around it and that foil helps the board to turn. So the more on rail you are, the less friction, the less drag, the easier the turn becomes. So now let's look at that same turn in a bottom turn. In this example, what I'm trying to do is I use the wave for acceleration when I drop in, as opposed to using my body. So the first thing you'll notice is when I take off, I go straight down the wave to where I think I need a bottom turn. Then if you look at that, you can see the lean and how I'm engaging the rail rather than the fins. Then I go up to get speed back down, straight to the place where I feel that I need to bottom turn again. So there's the lean on the bottom turn where I'm not standing on the board. And then the top turn is set up over there, boom. Straight back down to the next spot where I'd want a bottom turn again. So the big point of difference is that when I'm going down that wave, I'm not standing on the board. The surfers that are finding the bottom turns difficult are the ones that are balancing on the way down. The fins are causing drag. The friction on the bottom of the board is causing drag. They're feeling deceleration. And because they're feeling deceleration, they feel compelled to do something about it. So they start doing all these unnecessary twists, which is a lot more harder work because they're using their body rather than the wave's energy. There's an age-old saying that slow is smooth and smooth is fast. When you're doing a bottom turn, there's a lot more water at the bottom of the wave, and that water is being drawn up the wave in order for there to be a lip. There's push from the swell that's been propagated, but then also there's G-force. You've got 1 G of gravity pushing down. So that's all going to help the lip accelerate. But on the bottom, that water's got to draw up, and it draws up slowly. If you get your timing right, that when the water draws up, you extend up, and you do it slow and smooth, it becomes really functional and it looks effortless. The thing that you need to understand, if you've ever watched a kid riding a bicycle, if they are learning how to ride and they're a bit nervous, they're going to be very clunky and very twitchy on the bicycle. So every twitch means that there's a counter steer. So a lot of people, when they go into a bottom turn, they get overamped, overexcited, or really nervous and scared. And what they do is they make too much pressure on the board, and the board kind of cavitates or wobbles or drifts or slides. There's a number of things that can go wrong if you try to force the turn too fast and too quick. And what happens is they get a nervous reaction from what they've told the board to do, and it looks something like, oh, and they want to kind of stabilize it, and they end up cutting the turn short and surfing out onto the shoulder. Whereas if you watch someone like Ethan Ewing, they lean on the turn and they hold the turn. The turn is longer, slower, and smoother, and they come out of that turn with way more speed than people that do quick, fast, reactive type bottom turns. A lot of surfers, when they take off on a wave, the bottom turn's late. So they feel that they've got to force the board to turn. So they push down and they straighten and they pivot at the bottom of the wave. When what you should do, you want to extend at the top. Okay, so by extending at the top, you get lighter, but by pushing down over here at the bottom, what you're going to find is that you're almost cancelling out that lift that you want to get. If I go around here and I extend on the bottom, it's kind of like, I almost feel like I want to pop off the board, and I'm definitely not tapping into the lift of the wave. But when I go around and I extend at the top, so as I feel the skateboard going up, I go up. Watch what happens in terms of the difference here. So you can see that I'm tuning in to the compression where I soften and the extension where I straighten. When you straighten your back, the ability to twist and to see where you want to go and move is really good. But when you compress, it limits your ability to twist because you've unstacked all your bones and your muscles are trying to hold that in position. Whereas when everything's straight, really easy to move. So coming off the bottom, there is that straightening that you need to do to take you to the top. A lot of surfers have that the wrong way around. You might ask, what's a tennis ball got to do with the bottom turn? Well, most people overcook the bottom turn. So what I mean by that, the bottom turn is just a setup. So let's say I want to throw this tennis ball at that TV down the bottom there, all right? How much backswing am I gonna have, and how heavy and how hard am I gonna backswing? So a lot of surfers, when they do the bottom turn, they're like, whoa, and a little throw. And it's simply because they're so nervous and so tense, or they're leaving it late, and they put so much effort into the bottom turn that their top turn's like, in a golf swing, right? Your backswing is light, and then the energy is in the follow through. So it's the same in surfing. What you want to do is you want to lightly create lift, okay? And then when you go to the top of the wave, you want to drop your hammer and utilize your twist to drive you through the turn. So I like to think of it as a 70-30 rule. I spend 30% of my energy on the bottom turn, and I save 70% of my energy for the top turn. If you take off on a wave and you're scared, you're going to focus on the drop, and you're probably going to ride away from the power and you're going to the flats. If you take off on a wave and you're worried about making it, you're probably going to go mid-face, and you're going to try to generate speed, and you're going to miss all the best parts of the energy and the speed on the wave. But if you take off on a wave and you're reading where the energy is drawing off the bottom, and you take the fastest line to that, you'll be amazed at the speed, the power, and the flow that you get from your surfing. So it all happens by having pattern recognition as you're paddling to see the line that you want to take and knowing where you want to bottom turn. On the way down, you're going to be feeling the speed that you're getting, which will determine whether it's a twist or whether it's a lean, or whether it's a lean and fine-tuned with a twist. All of it's acceptable. You can mix and match it. Now, the interesting part is that when you do get the lift to the top, in other words, if your bottom turn has been successful, what you want to do is you want to twist and try to see and read the bottom of the wave, the part of the wave where the foam ball is and where it's drawing the water up, and you want to go back there and try to fine-tune that bottom turn again. So the most success I've had with clients is gone, right, when you paddle into a wave, you've got time to have a really great read, but you still got to paddle and pop up. But after a bottom turn, you're already standing, which means you've got more time to work on your read and to fine-tune your line and do an even better bottom turn. So if you stop thinking about the top turn as a top turn and think about it as just redo my takeoff and pick the best line, you will be amazed at how easy it is to set up really good bottom turns. If you're setting up great bottom turns, you're setting up a great ride. If you take the emphasis out of the top turn, you'll be amazed at how much better your top turn gets when you're more focusing on the setup than the execution. What you've got to understand about surfing is that we're riding energy that is being propagated through water. Water always takes a path of least resistance, and the best surfers make it look easy. So if you're finding your bottom turn difficult, you're not doing it right. You need to start tapping into the energy and paying attention to where it is and start to move with the energy rather than fight it. If you found this video helpful and you liked it, please subscribe and watch some of our other videos.